Good afternoon, YouTube. Today we are working on a 2004 Yamaha YFZ 450, and the customer wants a carburetor swap. He has a brand new carburetor that he had basically overjetted for racing. We're doing a new throttle cable. We're doing a new Petcock on his fuel tank. We are doing front and rear sprockets and chain and an oil change. So it's a pretty clean, you can see for 2004 it's pretty clean. The chain's got some slack in it. So we're going to take all that off. The teeth, you can see they're starting to get like shark teeth on the sprockets and the front sprocket, but they're not terrible. But this guy really keeps his stuff maintained well. So I'm going to start with the chain and the sprockets, and then we'll switch over to the carburetor, and then we'll do the Petcock because the gas tank's got to come off to get to the carburetor, and then we'll do the oil change. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I just want to give you a lowdown of where we are so far. You have to take off the left side wheel, and then you have to take off the rear sprocket, and the chain goes through the swing arm. So I'm looking on this chain and I do not see a link where it can be separated, so I'm gonna have to cut it with a grinder. All right, so, and then we can get off the front sprocket. But so far, I'm going to just show you 14 millimeter for the rear wheel, lug nuts, and there's washers underneath each one, and then 14 millimeter again for the locking nuts. And this is 8 millimeter Allen. Okay, so you're going to need to hold this side to break this free because it's a locking nut. And then you can take off the sprocket. Here's the old sprocket. And on the front, you need a Phillips head. There's 2 screws, and that holds this plastic shroud. And there's also a metal. There's a metal guide, so make sure you have the metal guide and make sure you keep it so that it sits right to keep that chain on. Okay, and that's where we are so far. I'm going to cut it. You need a grinder, and you need an impact wrench. That's to get the rear sprocket off and to get the rear wheel off. And then we're going to use a grinder and cut this chain. Here's the new chain, and the new chain has a link. So that's easy. We'll just put it on after we do the front sprocket, and we'll just put it on around everything and then just fasten it up. So I'll come back in a minute. Okay, old front sprocket is off. This is a little different than the new one. It's got kind of a lip on it to keep that chain nice and straight. But that's the old one. This is the new one. All right, you're gonna have to get a hammer and a punch to get this washer bent down. And this is 27 millimeter. And what you do is put the old chain back on the sprocket because it's in neutral and it's gonna spin on you, and just hold the sprocket in place, and then use your impact wrench to break the torque on it, the grip on it, and then loosen it up. And I'm going to put it back. I'm going to put the chain back on the new one and hold it in place, and then torque this back down, and then I'm going to bang that back down so that this does not loosen up. All right, so that's where we are right now. And then I will put on the new chain and the rear sprocket, and then this part of the service is done. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so we have the front sprocket on. The nut is is torqued down, and then the washer, the interior washer, is fastened back down so that this doesn't spin. We've got the new chain started, it's just hanging there. We haven't fastened it yet. I have the rear sprocket on, and we've got the locking nuts on the Allen bolts, and I'm gonna fasten this down. I don't have a service manual on this, but usually this bolt is usually 70 to 90 foot-pounds, somewhere in that range, and these are 35 to 45 most likely. So I'm going to torque it to somewhere in that range, both of them, and then we're going to put the chain on and fasten the link, and then we're going to have to adjust. This is the concentric right here. You can see we're going to have to adjust the axle for the chain depending on where it sits. All right, so that's where I am. Next step. Okay, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up in case this happens to you. So the chain he bought was extremely too long, as you can see. So what I had to do was use a grinder, and I ground this one down. These are all studs, as you can see, they're pressed in. So I ground that down, and I cut this link so I could get them to fit. Make sure you measure just right, and the way you adjust is you have 4 Allen bolts back here. Make sure you take off your brakes, and then let me see if you can see. So there's portholes on here. There's another one underneath here. I don't know if you can get to it right there. Okay, you can put an Allen key in there if you have a long Allen key, or a punch if you have this punch is obviously way too big, and you can put it in there like that, and then you can adjust the concentric around to tighten it up. And I'm going to do that after this is fully fastened. I'm going to tighten this up a little more. You see it's sagging a little bit, but I just wanted to show you that his chain was way too long. So if you happen to do that and you don't feel like sending it back, just cut, measure it out so that you have piece to piece like this. And on the I can't think of what it's called right now. My brain's not giving me the right word. Not splines. I can't think of what it's called. Sprocket. On the sprocket, make sure you're tooth to tooth so that you can put your piece through, and then you have your cover piece and then your locking pin. And make sure you put your O-rings in. O-rings go on the inside right here and right here. So anyhow, and then I'm going to adjust this and I'll come back. So that was a little detour I had for about 45 minutes. Okay, I just wanted to, before I button everything up, I just wanted to show you the final product. So we're fastened on. We have about 1 inch of deflection. That's what you want. Like I said, you can tighten it with these portholes on this concentric. The axle moved. You tighten and loosen these Allen bolts. Okay, so we're good here. Covers back on the front. Front sprocket is on and fastened. Rear sprocket is on. So that part of the service is done. Next, we're going to do the Petcock on the fuel tank, and then swap out the carburetor, and then we're going to do the oil change. And I think, if I remember correctly, that's everything. Oh no, it's throttle cable. I got to do a throttle cable too. All right, I'll be back. Next step. Okay, so you have your skin. I'm doing the Petcock right now. So this is your fuel tank. Fuel tank is out, and that's your Petcock right there. That's what we're changing out. You need to take this shroud off. It's got some fasteners down at the back here. Should be 10 millimeters, but this guy had some plastic fasteners, and then he had these Allen bolts up front on holding on right here. This again should be 10 millimeter or 8 millimeter bolts. So that's, I'm going to show you that the front is fastened here, the rear is fastened here, and then there's a 10 millimeter bolt right here holding the tank. The tank sits here, and the tank is fastened around these rubber grommets. You put it in there and they lock in basically, and you pull it back and you fasten it here. So now we can see and get down to the carburetor and get that swapped out, but I'm going to do the Petcock first. All right, next step. Okay, the Petcock is on. The new one is on, and basically it's just 2 Phillip heads, and it's got a rubber gasket built into it. So you just tighten it up, and like all of them, level with the ground is off, reserve is up, on is down. Okay, so we got that done. I just have it sitting. If you have fuel in it like this one does, have it sit on the side, and you can bring it up to change the thing, bring it the level with the floor. And then I was leaking out, you can see I was leaking out of the vent, so I have it just sitting like this now so it doesn't leak. All right, so that's done. Fuel line is on again. I just want to go over this with you real quick. I'm doing the throttle cable, and then the final step is going to be the carburetor. So you have to open up your throttle up here. Okay, this is your throttle, as you can see. It's just 3 Phillip heads, and then that's the cover. You need a pick, and you're gonna have to, I can't do it while holding the phone, but you're gonna have to bring it out like this, grab that wire with the pick and bring it around, pop it out, slide it out, and then we'll put the new one in. Actually, this is the wrong end. This is the end that goes in. Okay, we'll put the new one in, and then we're gonna route it down underneath this plastic shroud, down, 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 all the way back to the carburetor. Okay, so that's where I am now. I just wanted to show you this step before I put it back together again. Make sure you have a pick, and you're going to need a pick for the other end on the carburetor to get, same thing, to get it out of the holder. Okay, next step. Okay, sorry, I got caught up in the work, and I forgot to film the removal and the replacement of the carburetor. So here's the old carburetor, and I'm just going to show you. This is where the throttle cable comes in. All right, there's a 10 millimeter nut, and then there's a screwed threaded piece of metal tubing, and then there's another 10 millimeter over here. So you put the one in here, the 10 millimeter, and then you adjust your throttle there. The throttle goes around underneath and in the first hole right here. So put it in there. This is before you mount it. You got to get this in so that you have enough play. Mount it in there. Get this in and locked in right here. Put the cover back on, and then adjust out here. You can adjust out here, and you can also adjust. I'll show you. You can adjust up here on the throttle itself. If I can get this off, come on off. You can adjust here, adjust the sleeve out to tighten. See, right now I have it. I don't know if you can hear it. Throttle engages the minute I touch. So that's your first adjustment areas right there. Second adjustment, where are you? You're up in there, right here. Right here, I've got the rubber cover on it already. So there's a 10 millimeter bolt, not a bolt, 10 millimeter nut on this side, and then there's a 10 millimeter sleeve here. You adjust it so that it's tight. So this is the new one. We've got the new carburetor in. This is a 6 millimeter Allen. This is a 4 millimeter Allen. This is the one that was broken off in. The Allen key was broken off in it. We got a new one from Ace Hardware. I cut the old one out and removed it, and we got a new one to replace it. So we're all good to go on the manifold. This is, like I said, a 6mm, and that's on the engine side, the manifold between the carburetor and the engine. And then down here, the air box is a 6mm also, and the air box is up here, so you have to run it around your rear shock and then down in there. Okay, so carburetor is done. Make sure your drain lines, you put them down behind the swing arm, where there's a hole in the swing arm where the shock goes through. Put them down there. Don't have them over on this side so that the chain will chew them up. So put them down in there. That's done. Carburetor's in. There's 2 electrical connectors. Put a little dielectric grease on them, as you see I did, and put them back together again. They'll sit up in there. And then we're gonna do an oil change, and we're gonna put the gas tank back on. And the fuel line goes right to this port, okay? So that's the carburetor part done. The chain is done. We have the sprockets are done. The gas tank is done. The Petcock is put on the gas tank. So we're almost finished with everything. All right, next step. Okay, YouTube. This is the oil change on the 2004 YFZ 450. So your crankcase oil drain, this is the left side of the quad, is down below the, this is the gear shift. It's just down on the bottom there. It's a half-inch bolt, and just have a half-inch socket to get it off. And then open up your fill. It's just a plastic fill cap so that it'll drain out good. We'll drain that. That takes about 1/3 of a quart. And then your oil tank here takes about 1 2/3 of a quart. So basically it's 2 quarts for the whole system. But we're gonna fill this up with 1/3 of a quart, and we're gonna fill this up with 1 2/3. Roughly, I think it's like 1.64, and then this is like 0.32 or something like that. I mean, but it's close enough to saying 1/3 and 1 2/3. So basically it's 2 quarts between the two. So drain this out, and then we're gonna drain, it's up under here, and we're gonna drain that out after this is drained. And then the filter, I'll show you where that is in a minute. Next step. Okay, so we're draining out of the tank, opening up the fill port, just like this one. Let it drain out. You can see it's a 1/2 inch again, 1/2 inch bolt, and we're draining out right from the bottom of it. And then the next step is going to be the oil filter, and then we'll just fill it back up. All right, be right back. Okay, on the right side of the quad, you have this is the oil filter. Okay, this is the old one. You can see it's dirty. This is the port right here. Longest screw goes on the top front. Smallest screw goes right here on the rear middle, and then medium-sized screw goes on the bottom. So this is the top front. This one is the side rear middle, and then this one is the bottom. So take that out, let it drain. Make sure you have some brake clean so you can wipe down all the debris and the oil residue, and then put your new filter in. Gasket side inside, and then I'll show you the new one. Hold on. So this is your oil filter, and let me see the model number. 5 D as in David 3 1344009. 5 D as in David 3 1344009. And this is what she looks like. course, it doesn't want to come out. Okay, that's what it looks like. So gaskets on both sides, and it looks like we put it with this end in like this, and this end out. All right, so I'm gonna put it back together again and clean it up, and then I'll close down the video. I'll be right back. So I just wanted to run it for you. The new carburetor is in. I adjusted the fuel air mixture and the timing so that it's idling nice, and it's got a really good sound to it. So I still have to do the oil change, and I'm going to get that done, and then the complete service is finished, and this bike's going back to its owner. I'll be back after